Hey, folks. Welcome back. It's been too long, some would say. Others would say it's been enough. It's been enough time. But welcome back to the Processing Blue podcast. I am your host, Panthers beat reporter Mike Kaye. I'm joined by fellow Panthers beat reporter Alex Zietlow, and we are here to discuss the movie Sinners. Oh, wait, no, wait, sorry. I get the wrong page. We're here to discuss the NFL draft, which is coming up this week. And the Panthers are in one of those positions where it's like, yeah, honey, I'll go to the grocery store and pick up dinner, but I'd really prefer this. Oh, you'd prefer that? Okay, let's compromise, sort of situation. Anyway, you can already hear him giggling. Alex, you don't have to raise your hand. This isn't Mrs. Smith's third grade English class. What's going on?
Yo, dude, I have so many wait, are you on another podcast? Or are you on like a movie podcast? Like
I wish I was.
do you moonlight on like the rewatchables or something? Like I would listen to that.
I would listen to that too, but mostly because I like the sound of my own voice, as most of our listeners can tell. We are in a great mood this week because the NFL draft is about to kick off. The Panthers have 9 draft picks. They have 3 in the first 75. And I think they're probably going to try to get more of those in the top 75 if all goes well. Listen, the 8th overall pick is kind of, somebody asked if it was a value wasteland. I would say it's more of like a value compromise. The consensus in talking to people around the league is once you get past those first 5 non-QB prospects, it's kind of like everybody's kind of the same. Everybody has their warts. Nobody's really a slam dunk, and everybody's kind of graded out. Like 7 through 25 are pretty comparable grades, and then from there 26 through 74 are pretty comparable. I've heard Daniel Jeremiah call this a starter draft, which I think is actually very accurate. I think there is very good depth all along this draft, but what that means is there's a lot of good, not great, after those first couple of blue chips. And so there's been a lot of debate here. I know that Alex, along with a lot of people nationally, are just really just, hey, Jaylen Walker, come on down from Salisbury. And so I wanted to present Alex's case for why he thinks Jaylen Walker should be the surefire guy. I'm not as convinced. I will give you my reasons why afterwards, but I think Alex has some compelling arguments. And so let's feast on his thoughts like we're at Applebee's. Go ahead.
Well, I love me some Applebee's, dude.
Yes, I do. It's very interesting.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that chopstick. Woof. But I'm glad we're having this Jaylen Walker conversation because this has been something that we've been talking about on off air and private channels for a very long time as he's gained a lot of steam in the national consciousness. I'll lay out my case real quick. The case is around 4 points. 1, he's proven to be productive. 2, he's legitimately versatile. Not just versatile because, we don't know what else to say about him, but he's legitimately versatile. 3, all signs indicate he'll be a wonderful culture addition, and you know how important that is to Dan Morgan in this front office. And 4, he aligns with a desperate team need, which is getting an edge rusher. The team has said that they see him as an edge rusher. So just real quick, let me run through my points. 1, Jaylen Walker is productive. Forgive me, I know a lot of people who listen to this podcast have heard this before, but it's important just for the sake of the argument. As a senior, he notched 61 tackles, 6.5 sacks, was the 2024 Butkus Award winner, which is given to the nation's best linebacker. He was literally the best linebacker in college football last year. He steps up in big moments. 3 sacks in the Georgia Bulldogs' win over number 1 ranked Texas in the regular season, and then he had another really big game and another really great run through the playoffs. He can, if you watch his games in college, he's beating people by speed rushing. He's beating people by bull rushing. He's using his leverages really well in the run game. He can read plays before they happen, all these things. He is monstrously productive. Okay, number 2, his versatility. You go back and watch him, and he lines up everywhere pre-snap. He lines up in the middle. He lines up on the outside. Like I said, Dan Morgan sees him as an edge. And guess what? He made a lot of wonderful plays on the outside as a Bulldog. I get it. A lot of people are like, yo, his measurables don't grade out that well on the edge. He's 6'1", 243, smaller than the average edge rusher. But if you look at any draft analysis, they'll remind you that he's fast, relentless, and, quote, plays with his hair on fire. That's the most important thing when you're trying to discern who will and who will not be a good edge, if he has those characteristics. And real quick, I also find it fascinating that fans and evaluators praise versatility until you need to find a deficiency in someone, and so you use their versatility against them. You see that all the time. Like my first draft covering the Panthers, everyone fell in love with Bryce Young early. So what did they do to find a deficiency in them? They said, oh, well, he's too small. Will he be durable? And that is a legitimate concern, but that was never a concern at any point in the rest of his career, really. And so if you study something for so long, if you study someone for so long, you need to find a deficiency in someone. And the only deficiency really that they can find in the Jaylen Walker case is, he is versatile, meaning that he's not great in one thing. Well, he's legitimately great in multiple things. And that's my take on that. Just real quickly, last 2 points. He's a great culture fit. Dad was a coach. Dad was a defensive coordinator for Western Carolina and Coastal Carolina, and was also a head coach at Catawba. And finally, he aligns with team needs. We've talked about it. Who do the Panthers truly need to bolster that defensive front seven? They need an edge rusher. They need a good one. They need one for the future. DJ Wanham showed flashes of how good he can be. Jadeveon Clowney, you know he's my guy. I'm a Rock Hill guy. You know that. But they need an edge rusher to balance out the Turk Whartons, who wants to play tackle, the Bobby Browns, who is this big truck in the middle of the defensive line. They need someone on the outside, and I think that guy could be Jaylen Walker. Now, Mike, we've talked about this, and I haven't really, most of my ramblings are much more scatterbrained when we talk about this, but I've concentrated it into these 4 points. What is your rebuttal to what I just said?
So what I would say is I agree with everything you said, except that you're lacking the context of where he would land. And so my issue with Jaylen Walker at number 8, while I do think he will be in the discussion, I don't think he's a slam dunk here. And mainly because of the opportunity he would be inheriting. So let me give you some points here. I think that Jaylen Walker is a phenomenal player. I think he is a top 10 prospect in this class. I don't think it's debatable. But what I would say, I have seen over my career, which spans more than a decade, guys that are talented, that are put into the wrong situations typically fail. So here's what I mean by that. Their defensive coordinator, Ezrau, is coming off a season where he had the worst scoring defense in the history of the league. He also had the worst rushing defense since 1980. Oh, and by the way, in 3 years of being a defensive coordinator, 1 in Denver and 2 in Carolina, he has never been in a rush to play rookie players. Now, he's never had a first-round pick on those units. Nick Bonito was a second-round pick. He played about 30-something% of the snaps, but was inactive his first 2 games of his rookie year and basically played a sub-package role. He had a nickel corner who I believe his name is DeMar Mathis. He only played when Ronald Darby tore his ACL in week 5. DJ Johnson in 2023 only played when there was literally no one left to play at edge. Last year, Shaw Smith-Wade only played. He got in for an injury 1 week. Then once Troy Hill aged out and Dane Jackson forgot how to tackle quarterbacks in the open field, then he got to play nickel. Then Trevin Wallace only played once Shaq Thompson suffered a season-ending injury. He barely touched the field before he started. And so you're asking a guy, when you're taking a hybrid player, to basically build his defense around this guy. If you're picking a guy in 8th overall and he's going to be an edge, you better be playing him and playing him a lot. Now, I respect that Dan Morgan said that he is an edge outside linebacker of this defense. That makes total sense. It makes the positional value palatable. But there's no proof that he can play edge all 3 downs. Not in college, not in high school, nowhere. And while he is very good in spurts at both outside linebacker and inside linebacker, you are projecting him. And this team needs to win. And so I think when you look at production meeting testing numbers, you look at somebody like Donovan Ezrau, who has been projected anywhere from like 10 to 25, who had 30 career sacks at BC. Yeah, I understand he played in the ACC. It's not the SEC, whatever. He also had a 6.94 3-cone, which for edge rushers is elite. That's when testing meets production meets projection. And so I think like taking a more natural edge would make sense there. I think Jaylen Walker's a really good player. I really do. This is not about Jaylen Walker. This is about the situation inheriting. And I think when you have a defensive coordinator who badly needs to restore his reputation and is already pretty adverse to playing young players, I think that might be a terrible spot, because if the defense plays poorly and Ezrau's gone, there's a new defensive coordinator that comes in and says, hey, I see him as more of an inside linebacker. And so you've taken away a year of his development, similar to what happened with Zach Bond. Now, Zach Bond became a Defensive Player of the Year candidate when they moved him inside after he was wasted for 4 years in New Orleans. Oh, and speaking of Zach Bond, he was not drafted to be what he is now, is a hybrid player. Neither was Frankie Luvu, that everybody seems to want to compare Jaylen Walker to. By the way, Frankie Luvu wasn't used very well here. Neither was Jeremy Chin, another hybrid player. They both succeeded in a defense with Dan Quinn, who is an proven expert at using hybrid players. I just think the coordinator fit, the timing fit. If this was a different timeline, it would make more sense. Now, again, I could see him being the pick. It would be a fine pick, but I don't think it's a slam dunk the way it's being discussed without nuance. I think it's truly lacking nuance. It's one thing to evaluate the player, which I think you have done an exceptional job of doing and breaking him down of why he fits. But I also think you have to evaluate the ecosystem that he's entering. It's the same thing with Bryce Young, right? Bryce Young entered a poor ecosystem. And so I think if you are going to invest this type of compensation in him, like, well, you've got to figure this whole thing out. And I don't think it's a slam dunk. That would be why he wouldn't be picked.
Okay, so Mike, just a quick discourse on this. I know we need to move on from this segment. You said a lot of awesome things. I have 3 things. 1, very proud of you for getting in a 3-cone number in there. We know how important that is to you, and very happy that you were able to do that. 2,
I will say, it is the one natural, like, of the combine drills, it is the one proven or mostly proven thing to actually matter. Just saying.
It's wonderful. Like you have no idea how happy I am of your enthusiasm for this drill. Secondly, you make a mention of Frankie Luvu being better elsewhere. Still, dude, Frankie was a beast.
But he didn't like the way he was used here. Like
he didn't like it, but he was the key to that defense.
Right, but he was used essentially as an inside linebacker. They have literally just told you that he is an outside linebacker. So the comparison doesn't really make a ton of sense either. So
he was still great when this predates my time covering the Panthers, but he was still playing on the outside as well. Like
a little,
not during that final year, but when he had to step in for Shaq Thompson. But wasn't he playing on the outside when he was in the Matt Rule years?
Yeah, that's a completely different role and completely different coordinator. Oh, and by the way, Frankie Luvu was undrafted and played edge rusher for the first 3 years of his career and was barely playing. And then he was signed as a special teams ace by Carolina and Matt Rule. Oh, and then when Hassan Reddick left, then he kind of turned into what he turned into, right? Like, so again, no one's spending an 8th overall pick on this guy. I mean, like, that's what I'm trying to tell you is like.
But it is undeniable that Frankie Luvu was a baller. That's all I'm trying to say.
I mean, I would run at him literally every play if I could. I I think he was a good player for what he is, but there were clear deficiencies. And part of the reason why he was like not undeniable is like I was watching a clip earlier today where he just got like absolutely run over. It was just they popped on my timeline. Like I'm not hating on anybody. I want to make that clear. Like I think Jaylen Walker's a really good player. I think Frankie Louvu is too. But when you place such a value on analytics and value and positional value, I think this is a conversation that has to be had because this is a really important draft for this franchise. If you're a fan and you're tired of hearing like, hey, just be patient, this can't feel like the season's over in the first month again. It just can't. This has been 7 years of this. And so I do think there is, we gave this franchise a lot of grace last year. And so now that they are putting in part 2 of their plan, you need to see some progression. They were 5-12 last year. Like that needs to be acknowledged. And so you're putting a lot of pressure on whoever you're drafting 8th overall, especially if they're not a proven full-time guy at the position that they're going to play at the NFL level. That's just the reality of the situation. If there was a guy who could do it and had the mental makeup to do it, it would be Jaylen Walker. That said, that is a big gamble.
Final thing that I want to bring up. You mentioned Ezrau's lack of inclination to play rookies immediately. You listed off all these points. And I'm just like playing devil's advocate here, just like thinking of something that I think an earnest fan would kind of respond to. Ezrau has been in head coaching discussions for other places. We talked ad nauseum before this season was over, or before the 2024 season was over. Is he going to be retained? Does he even want to return? I think a lot of people will have an opinion of, okay, if let's say Ezrau isn't going to be the long-term defensive coordinator with the Panthers, well, how would it hurt to get a guy who is versatile, who is a baller, who has proven his football acumen? Like, how would it not benefit the Panthers to go and get someone who's versatile on a defense that could look a lot different in the next couple of years?
Well, but if it does look different, then you're saturating his value, right? Like, if he becomes an inside linebacker long term, you just spend a top 10 pick on an inside linebacker.
But not necessarily moving him inside. I don't know, just like putting him in a different scheme.
But here's the thing. If they go to let's say the next coordinator is a 4-3 guy, there's no way that a 4-3 defensive coordinator is making him put his hand down. There's no way. And so I also would say too, and maybe this has changed. Maybe Ezrau's been humbled by last year, but this defensive group has been just preaching size and length for 2 years. If you look at Wanham, if you look at Patrick Jones, if you look at Clowney, if you really look at the way they've built this front, like he's got 32-inch arms. He's 6'1". Like Ezrau, who's got 34-inch arms and is 6'2". Like typically you want a guy who's 6'2", 6'3", 6'4", and who has 33-inch arms. Like that's like the standard pretty much. But again, I think the thing that you hit on, and honestly I probably would have hit on more, and I know we're talking a lot about Jaylen Walker for this podcast.
No, but it's legit though, but yeah.
Is like his makeup. Like if there was one guy that I'd be like, cool. Like I think he's let's get this out of the way. I think he's an exponentially better prospect than what Isaiah Simmons was. But Isaiah Simmons was a hybrid player who was taken 8th overall, and they couldn't figure out what to do with him. I mean, Arizona has a string of those. They couldn't figure out how to use Hassan Reddick. They couldn't figure out how to use Xavier Collins. They couldn't figure out how to use Isaiah Simmons. I just think like when you're a team that's coming off a 5-12 record, you don't necessarily need sure things or high floor guys, but you need to feel comfortable with your coordinator and your coaches and your front office all have to be in line together, and you have to have a plan. And to me, Jaylen Walker strikes me as a guy whose plan could metamorphosize to the point where it could create, separation. That would be my thing. Again, I think Jaylen Walker is worthy of a top 10 pick. I don't know that this is the best situation for him to step into. And I think that needs to be accounted for on both ends.
And I think that's very fair. The discussion about Jaylen Walker, the Jaylen Walker conversation will continue. It'll probably continue well after the draft is over into OTAs, really through training camp. I am sure of it. And we will be here talking about it and probably having our arguments evolve as they happen. Mike, let's talk about your mock draft that dropped on Wednesday morning. And to introduce this topic, I want to share some poetry with you. When I'm alone in my room, sometimes I stare at the wall. All the mock drafts on the floor, so who do I call? Mike Kaye.
That was lovely.
Nah. Yeah. Our producer Zach Dennis just literally typed in UGH UG into our private Slack channel.
Shout out to Zach, man. I miss
Yeah. I mean, dude. I mean, what a guy. So for the readers, I'm not gonna go through every single pick that Mike does in his mock draft, unless if he like wants to open with that. Do you want to open with that, Mike, or do you want me to just ask you some questions about it?
Well, I thought we were gonna have a full screen, but I think everybody's busy. So here's what I'll do. I'll do like the too long didn't read edition, and you can.
Yeah.
All right. So I start this off with the trade. So I have the Panthers trading the 8th and 57th overall picks, the Miami Dolphins, for the 13th, 48th, and 98th overall picks, plus a 2026 third round pick. That 2026 third round pick might be a little too rich. Maybe it's a 6th round pick, whatever, in reality. But essentially, they're swapping first and second round picks with the Dolphins, and then they get a compensatory third round pick from the Dolphins and the third round pick in 2026. So they end up with 10 picks. So I have in the first round them trading to 13 Donovan Ezrau, the Boston College outside linebacker. With the second pick, the 48th overall pick, Carson Schlesinger, inside linebacker from UCLA. Third round pick, 74th overall, Kyle Williams, wide receiver, Washington State. With that extra third round pick, I have them taking at number 98, Noel Williams, cornerback from California. With their first fourth round pick, 111th overall, I have them taking Billy Bowman, safety from Oklahoma. With their second fourth round pick that they got from Dallas in the Mingo trade, I have at 114, Jonas Sanker, safety, Virginia. Fifth round, they have 3 picks, and I'll just do that in order. So Devin Neal, running back from Kansas. Mitchell Evans, tight end from Notre Dame. Holland Pierce, offensive tackle from Rutgers. And then with their 7th round pick, Andres Borregales, kicker from Miami. So that would be the entire group.
Sounds good. I have several questions about this. I thought it was a really fascinating exercise. Let's start with the question that I think a lot of people, when they read this, will have first. So, as of recording on Tuesday, this is the closest to the start of round 1 that there have been no trades for first-round picks in the common draft era. That's since 1967. In other words, every single team has the first-round pick that they, quote, earned based on their finish of the 2024 season. That is a historic thing. So, Mike, what makes you think the Panthers can find a trade partner at all, let alone a pretty favorable one like the Dolphins, who pick 13th?
There's always a sucker. No, that's true. You've got to smart organizations. I come from covering the Eagles. Smart teams can find the sucker in the building, and normally those guys are desperate and they want more than one position. And so Miami Dolphins are a team that is kind of desperate. They haven't won a playoff game since I think Alex was like in diapers, and
let's not do that.
Chris Greer is a guy who has been a GM since 2016 and has not won a playoff game. He is known for being aggressive with trades. They're already saying that they're going to shop Jalen Ramsey to somebody else. I could see it to where he wants to trade up for, and Teron Armstead, their offensive tackle, just retired. So I could see it to where they would want to trade up and get either the number 2 or 3 offensive tackle, especially if there's a run early, the number 2 cornerback after Travis Hunter, or they could be enticed by Ashton Genty, who, is getting like Hall of Fame projections already. So I think they're a team that has to make a splash at one of those three positions. They have to get the best of the best or one of the best of the best. And so I think this is going to be, to your point, this is going to be a very hard draft to trade back in. But that's why I think you have to be creative. So if I went to you and I said, "Hey, team that I'm trading with, you want to trade up and still pick in the second round? Cool. Let's just swap second round picks. Cool. I've got a better second round pick, and then give me a third and change." Like, I think that's a reasonable ask, especially a late third round pick, like that 98th overall. That's a compensatory pick. That's basically a fourth rounder. And so I think if you're a GM who's on the hot seat, you might not spend that third round pick in 2026. What do you care? It's all about gambling to save your gig and make things better. Now, I'm not saying that's the right approach to things, but that's how a lot of GMs in this league apparently do their stuff. And so I think for the Panthers, you just have to find the sucker in the room. I mean, I think the Dallas Cowboys are another team that could be influenced to trade up for a cornerback or a wide receiver. I think the 49ers could be influenced to trade up for an offensive tackle. I think the Bears are a team that could be very interested in Genty. Like, maybe you get your second round pick back from a few years ago. So, like, I think there will be options. I'm very interested to see how the board falls if Mason Graham finds his way to number 8, because I do think there will be teams that will be very interested in him. Plus, I think the Panthers will be interested in him. I've laid out why Jaylen Walker is not a slam dunk. And so I think that's why there probably it is like an interest in trading back. I think all these guys have their warts. A lot of them are good players. They're not great players.
Yeah. And I'm glad you brought up Jaylen Walker, because that's who I'm kind of going to ask about. So, okay, so the Panthers have this 13th pick in your mock draft.
Mm-hmm.
You roll with Donovan Ezrau out of Boston College. You've mentioned him, led FBS in sacks, played in the ACC, but measured out really well. In your opinion, just straight up, is Donovan Ezrau a better fit for the Panthers than Jaylen Walker?
I think he's a better natural ecosystem fit. I think Jaylen Walker is probably a better player and probably has better upside, but I think for what they need now and in the future, this team can't produce sacks. Like, they're Jadeveon Clowney and A'Shawn Robinson tied for the most sacks with 5.5. This team is constantly, even when Brian Burns was here, has constantly had trouble producing pressure. And if there's one thing that Donovan can do, that's what I think he can do. Now, here's the thing. It's not even about if he's a better fit than Jaylen Walker. Donovan Ezrau, a better second-round pick, an extra third-round pick, and a third-round pick next year is much more valuable than just Jaylen Walker when we're talking about value.
Yes. I mean, yeah, but I was asking you just straight up one-on-one. But yes, I totally get that.
I like him for the Panthers more than I like Jaylen Walker, based on like what they need.
Got it. Cool. 5 of your first 6 picks on this mock draft are defensive guys. Your first offensive guy is a receiver in round 3, Kyle Williams, as you said. Is this just how the mock draft board fell for you when you did this exercise, or are you someone who believes, like me, that defense should prevail?
It was a little bit of both, because I think their needed wide receiver is very specific. I don't think just any wide receiver will do. I think they genuinely need speed at the position. This is one of the slowest offenses I've ever covered, if not the slowest. And I think you need a guy who can take the top off the defense. If I'm an opposing defensive coordinator with this current wide receiver group, I know you want to run the ball, so I'm going to stack the box. And you might be able to beat me a couple of times a game for like 18-yard catches. I'm not convinced that you're going to turn an 18-yard play into a 47-yard play. And so I think they need somebody who can take the top off the defense, who can stretch the field. If they're going to run West Coast principles, they need a guy who can do that. And I don't think they currently have that right now. Kyle Williams averaged 17.1 yards per catch last year off of 70 receptions. It's a fluke if he did it off of 35. He doubled that number of receptions and still averaged 17 yards per catch. He also scores quite a bit. So I like his fit a lot. I think he's a guy who could develop into a really good complement for Xavier Legette and probably leapfrog him if all production goes well.
Nice. And then finally, let's stick with some pass catchers as my last question. Late tight end pick in your mock draft. He's considered the 8th to 10th best tight end of the draft. Do you see the addition of Mitchell Evans out of Notre Dame as a depth pick mostly, or do you see more from him?
I think he's very comparable to Jatavian Sanders and
Oh,
Tommy Tremble at the time, where it was like this guy has the upside to be a starter. Part of the reason why he's fallen is he had the ACL injury that he came back from pretty early and was still productive as a senior. He's pretty comparable to Tommy Tremble, and he's not as athletic, but he is a very good blocker. He's a decent pass catcher. I think he'd fit in really, really well. Um, if you're not taking a guy in the first 40 picks at tight end, most of those guys are probably going to be long-term development backups.
hey, that sounds good to me. Mike, you want to move on to the next segment, our under the radar need?
Yeah. So I wanted to touch on this because it does kind of feel like we kind of get
Well done on the mock draft, by the way. Sorry to cut you off. I should have given you some.
Yeah, what would be the Processing Blue podcast without Alex complimenting the elite guy? Um, so what I would say is we get lost in the sauce of like talking about wide receiver and edge rusher and defensive tackle and whatever. I wanted to kind of get your take on what the biggest underlying need is for the Panthers at this point, because I do think there are some that are really under discussed, and I was curious what your thought was.
Yeah, not to spend too much time on it, but that's kind of why I asked about Mitchell Evans at the end there. I think an under the radar need is a really good tight end. Is they, and not to say that Jatavian Sanders can't grow into one. I mean, he broke a record for most receiving yards by a tight end in Panthers franchise history last year. Awesome. They invested in Tommy Tremble. They re-signed him to a multi-year deal this offseason. So they have bodies. This isn't like the safety situation where they simply just like don't have people. But I do think they'll need to invest in the tight end in this draft. It's funny, the national guys that I've read leading up to this draft, more and more I just see like the Panthers taking it tight end higher and higher. They're not quite sold on Panthers using their 8th pick on Tyler Warren or whatever, but I think this is a position group that is getting noticed, and it's kind of emerging out of the radar, or it's on the radar, but it's emerging like onto the radar, so to speak. And so I think that's something that they need to consider. Mike, you got
two names to consider, two names to just keep an eye on day 2 when considering tight end. Oregon tight end Terrence Ferguson, and then Miami tight end Elijah Arroyo.
Cool. Sounds good. Yeah, I'll keep after you.
We'll come back to that next week.
Your under the radar needs, though.
I think that running back is a position that is kind of being talked about, but not really. I think.
Oh, the Jonathan Brooks guys are coming after you, Mike.
Yeah, I think the Jonathan Brooks situation carries with it a lot more nuance than I think just like recovering from an ACL injury. He's now recovering from 2 and is not really played in the NFL level. And so I think there's a chance that he comes back rusty. There's a chance that he doesn't potentially play this year. There's a chance that, that long of a layoff deters his talent or his growth or his development. So I think you really have to safeguard yourself. Now, they signed Rico Dowdle for 1 year to kind of be that placeholder. But this team constantly talks about how they want to run the ball. And you don't want Chuba Hubbard, now that he's been paid, to be this like workhorse, do everything, 300 carries a year sort of guy. I think you need a guy who can be a number 3, who can develop this year, who can develop into a number 2. Now, Rico Dowdle has his history of injuries as well. So does Chuba Hubbard. You need a guy who can play and be very much involved. And I think Devin Neal from Kansas, the guy that I had in the mock draft in the 5th round, 49 touchdowns. He kind of brings a comparable style to Chuba Hubbard and Rico Dowdle, which normally you would push it off against. But Dave Canales told me at the owners meeting that he kind of liked that, the consistency of the position. And so I think there's a reason they're still looking for running backs. I also think if a guy has return experience, that's advantageous as well. I think returner is something that's being stepped over. I do not think that Raheem Blackshear is a surefire kick returner at this level. As you know, applaudable as the job he did last year. I mean, he got a lot of returns. He got a lot of mileage out of that. It made up for his lack of touches on offense. So yeah, that's what I would say.
Yeah. Yeah, totally cool. Let's do our hot takes for this draft, Mike. And if you don't mind, I'll go first, so it could perhaps be forgotten if this doesn't age well. Honestly, it's not that sizzling hot of a take for this draft. I just think, and here it is, I just think that you're only going to have one day one starter from the 9 picks that the Panthers plan to have. On the first game of the 2025 season, you're only going to see one guy start of the draft selections this year. And that's not to say that this draft class can't grow into contributors. They can't grow into starters one day. But I think the first round guy is going to be the only guy that you immediately pick. One, because in the first round, you are going to not only take someone who is enormously talented, you're also going to take someone who aligns with a direct team need that makes a lot of sense. But 2, the Panthers did a lot in free agency when beefing up that defense. And I really think the defense is going to be the priority in this draft. And when you do that, you know, the draft is much like a backstop. I think that's how they're going to take chances. Obviously, they're going to believe in these draft guys, but I don't think they're going to be day one guys, particularly because, like I said, they did a lot of work in free agency already. And, you know, like I said, the Panthers need a tight end. They're probably not going to invest in a tight end until pretty late in the draft. They need a cornerback, and who could conceivably do that too. They got 2 really good they got 2 cornerbacks that they're really bought into in Mike Jackson and J.C. Horn already. So I just don't see anyone outside the first round being a day one starter. And I look forward to being wrong about that. Mike, what's your hot take?
I think that would be a rough go. But then again, as I said, Ezrau doesn't play rookies, so I mean that helps you out there. So I think this team will double dip at a position, but not necessarily the position you think they will. Now, I double dipped in my mock draft at safety. I think they could potentially double dip at a position like inside linebacker. And that's probably not being talked about. I don't know that that's a hot take. I mean, my other thing is like I think if they double dip at safety, that one guy, the other guy has to be like an absolute special teams demon to take the place of like Sam Franklin, which is why I did the Sanker Bowman kind of thing, because Sanker is that type of guy. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I know I came up with this topic, but my hot take probably is a little lukewarm. Yeah, I mean,
That's cool. That's cool. You know what? Hot takes aren't really our thing. We can just agree on that because we like to back our stuff up with whatever. Before we go, you want to talk about your favorite NFL movie, the most realistic NFL movie of all time?
Which is really a stretch. Because like some of the conversations in that movie don't make any sense.
None.
Like not just on an NFL draft level, like on a human level. Like
yeah.
Like I like how they like just split out like plays like looks like Tarzan, plays like like they use like all of like the idioms that you've heard from for like years, like surefire, first ballot, blue chip.
Wait,
like
Mike, have we even said what movie we're talking about?
Oh, draft day, right? Yeah, sorry. So I brought this up like so I used to have a boss who was like obsessed with draft day. Like he would watch it every year on draft day. And I'm like, why would you do that to yourself? I think what's cool about it is very similar to other Kevin Costner sports movies. It allows people that wouldn't necessarily be interested in that subject be interested in it because it's built around a likable lead or a love story or what have you. My wife and I saw it in the theater. I want to say I don't remember when the movie came out, but I'm pretty sure I was still in Jacksonville. And this job, it's on hours, it's a lot of work, it's like obsessive, you're doing a ton of stuff. It's not for the faint at heart. And I think like if you have a spouse who's not familiar with that, it can be very hard to understand. But we went and saw draft day and she's like, wow, that's like exhilarating. Like that's like incredible. Like it took me on a ride. Like this is what you're covering. Like, oh my. And so like that kind of gave me a little bit of goodwill. So I don't dislike draft day as a film. I think it's a bad movie. But I don't dislike it.
That's insane.
I think it's a bad movie. I just really do. There are such logic gaps in that movie that it's like
It's a movie.
right, but like
Every movie has to be this Oppenheimer for you.
well, no, but like I guess like so I guess it's kind of like being a history professor going to watch Troy, right?
Yeah.
Or like
Yeah.
or Gladiator, right? Or wait, the Gladiator 2, I haven't seen it yet, but aren't there like sharks swimming around? Yeah, that. Yeah, if I was a history, I'd be like, how did they get? Where did they get the sharks? How did they get the sharks? I didn't finish that word. I'm pretty proud of myself.
I'm ready to.
But like I think that's what, or it's like being an actual sniper in the military and watching a movie about a sniper, and they're like, well, that kind of like I saw on Twitter during The Last of Us, one of the characters is holding a gun like this, and I saw like a huge thread that was like, hey, you probably, if she's like a military expert, she should know that's probably like the most dangerous way to hold a gun, period. Like, you know what I mean? Like I think I'd like the what is it, the cognitive dissonance or whatever. Like I can't like separate it. Like it's like, why would this guy who is a GM trade like 8 second round picks for this? Like, also, who the hell asks for a return specialist in a massive trade? Sorry, I'm not trying to spoil the movie for you, but like there's some trade, like it doesn't make sense. And
Because Mike, there's a simple explanation. Vontae Mack, no matter what. That's what it is. No matter what. This isn't a story
I
about
understand, but that GM should have been fired if that was the case.
because they were contemplating it. They were contemplating it during the movie. They were like, what the heck is Kevin Costner doing? They literally said that.
And also, this like owner is like such a terrible representation of NFL ownership. It's like
Yeah.
like there's a lot of problematic themes here, just from like an actual reasonable like. And I get it; it's a movie. It's a Kevin Costner movie, so like
Kevin
yeah,
Costner, yeah.
like my favorite scene in there is when he calls up the Wisconsin coach, who's played by who is it, Zach?
No idea.
Oh my god, this is killing me because he's like in everything and he's amazing.
All right, I'll look it up.
He's in Tombstone, which is like bothering me.
Oh, it's Val Kilmer. I'm kidding.
No, the brother Virgil. He plays Virgil.
Dennis Leary.
No,
All right, well that's what Zach said.
no. Dennis Leary is the coach for the Cowboys, or the coach that came from the Cowboys for the whatever.
Okay.
Hold on, because this is gonna kill me all day, and
Sam Elliott.
listeners are yelling at me about Sam Elliott. That's what it is. Okay, so he calls up Sam Elliott, who's like this grizzled Wisconsin head coach, and like they're talking about the quarterback's birthday and stuff, and it's like, and nobody's showing up, and it's just like, I get it, but you should have had this conversation like months ago. And then they had their fixer who's there, and he's like, guess what? I'm going to tell you this all the day of the draft. That guy should have been fired. Like, there's so many, like, none of it makes any logistical sense. It's almost like they just showed up at the draft that day, and they're like, hey, let's plot out the board. That doesn't happen.
Yeah, no, of course it doesn't happen, but, like, it's did you watch the movie Saturday Night?
Yeah, I love that. It was great.
Yeah, dude, like all those storylines. I mean, yeah, it was probably really chaotic before the first filming of the first.
Sure, I understand it's a Hollywood movie. I get it.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like timelines shrink.
Right, but the words, like the dialogue's horrific. Like some of this stuff doesn't make any sense. Like their conversational shifts are like 3 scenes got edited out, and then they're suddenly talking about this stuff. They're trying to pigeonhole this love story in here, and it's like, why do we care? And then somebody's pregnant, and it's like there's like a lot going on here, and it's like, cool, I understand you're trying to stack this dude's day, but like in reality, like then the mother's there to scatter ashes. It's like she doesn't know that like the draft's kind of a big deal, and you've got a lot of stuff going on, and then like, I don't know.
I hear you. Let me leave you with this parting sentiment. Draft day, Johnny Manziel. 5 years later, how is Mike the man still? Thanks as always for listening to our pontifications on all things Panthers with Mike, Kaye, and myself, and our wonderful producer, Zach Dennis. Please subscribe and follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts by searching Processing Blue. And if you watch us on YouTube, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and click on the bell icon to get notified whenever new episodes drop. And finally, please be sure to stick to charlotteobserver.com for all your Panthers needs. Stay humble, stay creative, and Mike, keep processing.
Shout out to Emily. That's a wrap.